Right, so welcome to this talk today. It's going to be on the topic of how to enjoy sugar whilst also losing weight. So is that possible? Is that something that is contradictory? Well, to be able to understand this, we just need to have a bit more information about sugar and the effect it has on our body. So let's get straight into it. So why is sugar a problem? Okay, what's the issue with sugar? Well, there's two angles that you can look at this from. Well, let's tackle the first one. So often when we just look at nutrition in terms of calories, it doesn't take the whole perspective of what's happening when we consume food. So here, let's look at something else that's really important when it comes to sugar, which is insulin. Now, hormones play a very important role with anything to do with nutrition. You've got hunger hormones, you've got things like leptin, for example, is really important. But probably the most important hormone would be insulin. Insulin is probably the most important hormone. Now, to understand how this plays a role in terms of sugar, let's look at this illustration. So if you imagine insulin as being like a worker, okay? So you've got this worker, and what the worker does is that under normal circumstances, if you have excess fatty acids, they go into fat stores, okay? If you have excess simple sugars, they go into muscle movement and gives you the energy to be able to move. And then excess amino acids builds proteins, okay? Now, the issue is, the issue with all of this is excess, yeah? The problem happens with excess, and this can be excess in sugar, it could be an excess in protein, and it could be an excess in fat as well. Now, we're not going to look at protein and fat today, but they also play a role. We're just going to look specifically at sugar. But all three of these are problematic, yeah? All three of these are problematic. So if you have lots of excess sugar, basically the insulin stops working, yeah? And if you also have excess fats, the sugar can't be put into the muscles that we talked about before, and that's where it can get very dangerous. And in worse, really bad circumstances, this is what leads to type 2 diabetes. So it's the excess that's the problem. It's not necessarily in and of itself, yeah? So one of the problems when you hear about calories are calories, yes, calories are calories, calories in, calories out, whatever the calories come from. But excess sugar leads to other problems. So you've got the calorie dynamic taking place, but you've also got the excess sugar resulting in impacting insulin and the function of insulin. Now, from a caloric perspective, the other problem with sugar is it's very calorie dense, yeah? So you're getting a huge amount of calories within a short and small amount of space. So the two big problems with the sugar, and there are other problems as well, but the two big problems with sugar is, number one, is the impact that it has on insulin, and number two is the fact that you're getting a lot of calories within a short or within a small space, okay? Now, the second question is, well, why is sugar addictive? We all have that feeling that sugar is not like other foods. Sugar seems to be incredibly pleasurable, and all those decadent, really enjoyable foods tend to have sugar in them. So what's the issue here? Well, to address this, we have to ask a question here, which is, are we in the matrix? And we actually posted a video on the group about this. Is the food that we're actually eating actually even food? Now, the reason why we mentioned the matrix is there's a scene where Cypher in the Matrix talks about the steak he's eating. And he says that I know that this is just sort of artificial, and it's just spiking all my pleasure hormones, etc. And then he said, but ignorance is bliss. So we know when we go into the sweet shop and we know that this isn't really proper food, yeah? But we enjoy the impact that it has on our senses, etc. And so therefore we consume it anyway, even though we know that the impact that it has on our body is not very good. And this is where you have something called ultra-processed food. So it's a category of food which you'd be surprised how much of what we eat fits into this category, yeah? Now, this is actually one of my favorite approaches to looking at nutrition, because it's really shocking. This study says that 57.9% of the food that we eat, and this is out of like 10,000 people, so it's a large amount of people, but 57.9% of the food that was being consumed was ultra processed. And this is basically food that doesn't really have any real nutritional value. It has no real nutrient content. Okay. Now, this is my favorite. Of all the nutrition studies I've seen, this is probably my favorite. Okay, because look what happened. And like I said, there is a little video you can watch on this that we've put on our social media pages. But they did this study where they matched two groups of people. And look what they were matched for. They were matched for calories. So two groups, each one eating food. They were the same for calories, macronutrients, which is fats, proteins, and carbohydrates. They were matched for sugar, sodium, and fiber. These are all important things as well that we consider when we're eating food. Yeah. But the only difference between the two groups is that one was eating processed foods or ultra processed foods, and the other diet was not processed. The one that was not processed actually ended up losing 0.9 kilograms. And those people eating the processed food put on 0.9 kilograms. So it shows you how much of an impact that ultra processed, just the fact that it's processed or ultra processed, because processed could be like cooking is a type of processing, but ultra processed is basically when the food is basically artificial. Yeah. That had such a huge impact on people's weight that even though everything else was matched, just the fact those ultra processed people put on weight, whereas the other group, they lost weight. So the way to look at sugar is actually to see it more like a drug. Yeah, it's seen more like a drug because it shares those properties of a drug. Yeah, the rapid rate of absorption similar to drugs. And you can see it here that it says it proposed that that has a rapid rate of absorption with and it's similar to drug abuse. Yeah, they actually say refined carbohydrates is similar. Now, drugs are very dangerous, and is it controversial to compare sugar to drugs? Well, the impact is very similar. Now, you can see in this study that actually surpassed the cocaine reward. Yeah, so it's very difficult to resist the sugar, and it says here that it includes this was done like on rats. So they actually gave rats the option of being either on cocaine or sugar, and they actually preferred the sugar. So if you juxtapose sugar with drugs in rats, they're preferring sugar. And also, as well as that, what ends up happening with a lot of sugar, it tends to be coupled with fatty foods as well. So fat has this impact on the body as well. Now, there's one theory behind why we love sugar so much. Yeah, this is just a theory, but there's one theory, which is that it's very similar to breast milk. Okay, because breast milk is basically referred to as high fat, high sugar. So breast milk, and so one of the theories is that the reason why we have that kind of lust and yearning for sugar is because it sort of harks us back to when we were a child, when we were a baby, and we were consuming breast milk. Even just the smell, the smell could trigger those reward systems. So it's not your fault if you really find sugar just irresistible. Yeah, because it's sort of it's not just any type of calorie. It is a calorie that is extremely addictive. In fact, they've referred to sugar as acellular calories. So yes, they're calories, but they're not really operating within the usual cell structure that we find with other nutrients. Yeah. So it's been hyper intensified. Yeah. So it's calories, but hyper intensified and irresistible and very difficult to say no to. So then the question is well, should we be consuming sugar? Yeah. The answer to that is I doubt anything will stop you. Yeah. So, we look down at people who have drug addictions, but we probably are addicted to sugar. I mean, I've been consuming sugar since I was a little child. I remember when I was growing up, we used to have these penny sweets. So you go to the shop and you'd give them like pennies, and they would put you lots of different sweets in a bag. We had gobstoppers and all sorts of different sweets. And over the years, you've gained an affinity to Belgian chocolate, Swiss chocolate, all these different brands. It's very difficult with such a strong association to say, okay, I'm going to stop eating sugar. I mean, there are people obviously who do that, but I'm not one of them. And maybe I'm assuming probably you're not going to be one of them either. Yeah. The one thing that can help is being aware of what's called sugar blockers. Yeah, so there's two practical things to take away from today that you can benefit from. The first is polyphenols. So polyphenols are found in berries, and in particular, we can say that they're found in, so you can see here in strawberries, yeah? But also in particular, you can find them in blueberries. So the studies here show that berries reduce the sugar absorption, yeah? So you can see here, these results suggest that when WB, which is wheat bread, is consumed with berries, less insulin is needed for maintenance of normal or slightly improved postprandial glucose metabolism. And you can see here what happens, it blocked the amylase, which is the enzyme that breaks down the carbs. So that's why it works. So generally speaking, a really good habit to have is to have frozen blueberries. Yeah. The beautiful thing with this is that they're actually a good alternative to sweets. So you just have these frozen blueberries. They can be a really good alternative to sweets. But also they have the benefit of being very high in polyphenols. They're not, they know it's the polyphenols because blueberries have a better effect than things which are high in fiber. So it's not the fiber, it's actually the polyphenols. Yeah. The other thing that can help with blocking sugar is vinegar. So you've probably heard of apple cider vinegar is really popular. It doesn't have to be apple cider vinegar. Just any vinegar can have this effect. Yeah. So it reduces sugar levels. So you can see here that vinegar ingestion at mealtime reduced fasting blood sugar concentration in healthy adults at risk for type 2 diabetes. Now, if you can include vinegar as like a condiment, as something that gives your food taste, this can be an easy way to include apple cider vinegar. Never drink it directly. So you have to, if you want to drink it, you have to dilute it, you have to put it in some water. But that really does have an impact. Vinegar has a number of different benefits. This is just one of them. Yeah. So it reduces sugar spikes. Yeah. So this is the thing with vinegar as another thing. So in these situations, it says vinegar attenuated PPG by 20% compared to placebo. Yeah. PPG stands for postprandial glycemia. Now, but the question is that, and this is why I posted on the post, you can actually eat sugar and still lose weight. This is the final thing I want to talk about. The answer to this is yes, but you need to understand your metabolism. Yeah. Now, what I'm going to show you is what I've been doing. So this is 6 years worth of what I've been doing. So I understand my metabolism really well. So I every single week will eat chocolates and sweets. Yeah. And it is what it is. I mean, that's just, I haven't been able to completely get rid of it. Probably it's not the healthiest thing in the world. I know that, but it doesn't affect my weight. So I'll show you what I have. I've got this spreadsheet that I use. Yeah. And I have a criteria for every day. It's either green, orange, or red. Now, I've been doing this since 2017. You can do this. And you can see here that my weight was 72.2 kilograms, which is the ideal BMI. For my height, that's my kind of ideal weight. Yeah. Fast forward, which is the 28th of August, which was recently. And you can still see here that my weight is 72.2. Now, before I used to do more exercise. I used to do exercise like 6 days a week. Now I'm a bit lazier. The past month I've been on holiday. So I've been eating a lot of junk over the past month, but it hasn't really affected my weight. So I know my metabolisms. I know I can get away with in terms of sugar treats. Yeah. And the only way for you to do something like the only way for you to incorporate sugar is for you to understand what you can get away with. Yeah. So you really need to have this criteria. So basically, a green day would be like the ideal day. An orange day would be like half, and a red day would be like a bad day. Yeah. Now, what the criteria is for your green, orange, and red, that needs some work for you to be able to understand it. But it needs to have two criteria for whatever is green, orange, and red. It needs to be, the criteria must be achieve the goal that you want. So if you want to lose weight, you're gonna have to be a bit stricter on yourself. So initially in 2017, I was trying to lose weight because I was a bit, I was overweight then. Yeah. Whereas now I don't really need to lose weight. I'm not looking to lose weight. So it needs to achieve the goal that you want. And number two, it needs to require minimal willpower. Yeah. So that it's sustainable. So whatever way that you apply needs to be something that you can sustain. Otherwise, if you do a diet, once you're off the diet, you'll put the weight back on again, and that's not going to work. Okay. Now, it helps me because obviously this is what we do, so I teach nutrition to people, and we have this course and we go through all the different studies. So I know all of these studies, I know all the different things that I could potentially do. And from these, I've selected the ones that I need to do. Yeah. So this is the course that we teach. and then you have all these different modules and things like that. So I know all the studies. So in this course, we go through 900 studies. It's not like a really, really long course. Like if you do a dietetics degree, the reason why a dietetics degree is 3 to 4 years is because you're studying lots of other disciplines as well. Endocrinology, intravenous feeding, all the stuff to do with other disciplines. You know, people got cancer or these other areas. But like in terms of public health and weight loss, there's not that much. It's an endless science, but in terms of the key things that you need to be aware of, there's not endless. Yeah. So just being aware of them and saying, right, these are my criteria. For me, exercise is a big part of it. Fasting is a big part of it. So I have certain things that work really well for me. Having berries, you know, is one of those things that I really like to do. Whole grain. So there's specific things for me, but it's all about you working at that criteria, and then you just don't need to worry about it anymore. That's it. You just know that I need to apply that criteria on specific days. And as long as I do that, my weight won't increase, and I can enjoy these different things. And I think that's, for me, that's the thing that makes me a little bit sad where I see people who really struggle, that they haven't applied enough healthy things in their life so that they can achieve their goals. So they just struggle their whole life. And I think that's quite sad. So hopefully you've benefited from that and you got some use from it. What we'll do now, we'll just open up for a few questions. I can see people are in the chat. They've said a few things. So, good question. So this is black tea, yeah? Black tea without sugar is high in polyphenols, yeah? So there's another source of polyphenols. I didn't mention this, but my go-to drink is black tea. I really enjoy that. So that's another source of polyphenols, and I'm sure that has an impact. You can make this healthy drink, and green tea is even better, but you can take this healthy drink and make it really unhealthy by putting sugar in it or sweetener in it. Even milk will cancel out the benefits. So I stopped having sugar from day one. I never used to have sugar in my drink, in my tea. If someone gave me some good advice, and I just got used to it. And tea has a, see, if you put sugar in tea, it's just like having a chocolate. I might as well save that sugar for chocolate. Yeah. So if you take it out, it has its own taste. People say, oh, it's bitter, but then you will start to enjoy that bitterness. And then also the milk as well. You know, you remove the milk. So just basically you're drinking the drink itself. Yeah. Cool. Okay. So right. If I can just ask everyone just to turn off their cameras as well, please. Cool. Okay. So the other question was coffee and lemonade. So I don't know what your question is, Sahar. So if you maybe can clarify that, we can talk about it. I'm not sure what your question is. Also, for women over 40, again, I'm not sure what that question is. So first of all, so in terms of your question about berries, what's the max? Berries are very, very healthy fruits. Of all the fruits that are out there, berries are probably near the top. So, you know, I mean, there's a whole section, we didn't talk about this. There's a whole section in our course where we talk about the sugar in fruit. So if you concentrate, so if you take like orange juice, for example, orange juice, it's not blunted by any fiber. So if you eat an orange, it's blunted by the fiber in that orange. Yeah. And there's lots of benefits in having fruit. There's many studies that show, you know, the longevity benefits of having fruit, etc. Now, people will say that, you know, but it's got sugar in it. Yeah. Well, it's got sugar in it, but is that sugar being absorbed? That's the key. So it really depends. Like if you're talking about living a long, healthy life, and you're not necessarily thinking about losing weight, then berries is a must. It's full of antioxidants, so it reduces oxidative stress, and you're only going to get that from the berries. Yeah. So, you know, it's just like for me, for example, I'm not looking to lose weight. Berries, I try to incorporate as much as possible, and I don't worry about, oh, it's got sugar in it, blah blah blah. I mean, if you think about it, you know, when you get that sugar high and you crash, you don't get that with berries. Yeah. Now, in terms of bread and rice, bread is an ultra processed food. So a lot of people don't know this. Bread is not like berries. Berries you get from the bush. Bread is not. Bread is cooked, it's processed, it's in that category we talked about before. And then if you have something and it's called ultra processed food, then you'll have it's not only is the bread then. So with the bread, what was my point? I lost my train of thought. So yeah, so if you have if you're eating bread compared to if you just like you said roti, like I mean the thing is that you have the bread is ultra processed, then if you have something like roti, it's being often fried in oil as well, which is very high in calories as well. So it's oh yeah, I remember my point. So if even if the bread is whole grain, it only needs to be 50% whole grain. So the bread could actually be 50% just highly processed white flour, and it'd still be classified as whole grain. So that is not the same. So yes, that's a carb, and berries are a carb, but there's such a big difference between them. Berries, we talked about antioxidants. We talked about berries actually blocking amylase, yeah, which breaks down the sugar. You get none of that by eating bread. You get none of that benefit. In terms of rice, it depends on the type of rice, but there's some big studies being done, particularly on the Chinese population, which is very big on rice. Rice can be quite healthy. Rice can be, it is still a carb. So you have, carbs come in different forms. You have the dark green vegetables. That is a brilliant type of carb. Yeah. And then you have the white bread, which is a carb, but it's a processed food. And then you have sugar, which is ultra processed, like a drug, etc. So it's like a spectrum. In terms of just putting it, like when you're making a meal, you'll have a base. Yeah. You can make the base vegetables. So that's the answer to that point. You can make the base of your food vegetables. You can take like a vegetable medley and make that and you just get used to it. I know we're used to having, but if you want, like, if your criteria for my criteria for a green day is I have to have cruciferous vegetables, broccoli, cauliflower, and I'll use that as the base. And you can actually get broccoli and cauliflower rice. It's just that's never really worked for me personally. I don't like that. I just prefer having the broccoli and the cauliflower. But that is something that's good. Okay. So you're asking about apple cider vinegar. I mean, I wouldn't put anything so strict. When you have these really strict criteria before, after a meal, etc., you just make it hard for yourself. I mean, it's difficult to have vinegar as it is. So if you're happy to have it, I don't have vinegar that often, I'll be honest with you. Yeah, unless like I'm feeling really unhealthy, then I'll try and do like a boost in the other direction, because vinegar is very good. But yeah, I mean, having it through a straw, because you probably know this, vinegar erodes the enamel, so you want to try and dilute it as much as possible, as with fruits as well in general. So that has a downside of it. But these before, during, after, the studies talk about these sorts of things, but I don't want to put a strict criteria. I just try and incorporate it as much as possible. Okay, so we haven't got any more questions. Yeah, I mean, yeah, the cost of healthy food is because unhealthy food is often subsidized. So that's the issue that you have with when you become healthier. Yeah, you're right. I mean, that's an issue structurally, but if you get frozen vegetables, I think, and frozen berries, that can really help, because the problem with all these vegetables and fruits, particularly with something like blueberries, is that they just spoil very quickly. So that's like a good hack. If you freeze something, it can last you quite a long time, and that can help with reducing costs. Cool. Okay. So in conclusion, then, the key takeaways from today: we talked about vinegar, we talked about berries and polyphenols in general, and we've talked about the impact that sugar has on your insulin, the fact that sugar is very calorie dense, the fact that it is a acellular calories, so it's more like a drug sometimes. That's why we're so addicted to it. For you the takeaway from this today is, if you're struggling with your weight or anything like that, it shouldn't be a lifelong struggle. I put a 3-month target to crack this, and set a criteria, and then just enjoy your life. So that's really something that I'm very passionate about. Don't make it such a long-term struggle that you're struggling with. Yeah. Cool. Okay, good stuff. Well, I'm glad you benefited, Aisha, and hopefully everybody else benefited as well. Like I said, keep on sharing the links with others, and we'll keep on having discussions about this and future topics. And yeah, hopefully you've benefited from that. And I will speak to you soon. Yeah, granola is not good. Granola is an ultra processed food, basically. Yeah. So don't be fooled. Like if you want whole grains, go to the sources of whole grains that like unprocessed. So like steel cut oats is a good example. Legumes, so any type of beans, vegetables, fruits. These are a good source. Granola is just basically a processed food, an ultra processed food with that as well. Cool. Okay. Let me get that.